Welcome to Emmy Stories. In this world, danger doesn't always knock on your door. Sometimes it lives inside your home. This is a story of secrets whispered in the dark, of loyalty twisted into betrayal, and of a woman who must face the unthinkable when those she trusted most turn against her. From the outside, the Carter family looked like the picture of happiness. Angela Carter had built her life around the man she loved, Michael, and the mother she trusted most, Veronica. Their home was modern, their smiles were bright, and their future looked secure. But behind those walls, hidden cracks were already forming. Angela believed she had everything she ever wanted. Her husband, Michael, was successful, charming, and admired by their friends. Her mother, Veronica, was elegant and supportive, always present at family gatherings, always ready with advice. To anyone who glanced their way, the Carters were the definition of stability. But perfection, as we know, often hides the darkest secrets. It began with the small things. Michael, once attentive, started drifting into silence. He spent longer nights at the office, longer hours staring at his phone. Angela tried not to worry. After all, marriages had rough patches. But what she didn't know was that those silences weren't empty. They were filled with whispers, with stolen glances, and with a dangerous connection forming much too close to home. Veronica, Angela's mother, had always carried herself with poise. She was the kind of woman who drew attention without asking for it. Polished, confident, and used to being admired. She was a mother, yes, but she was also a woman with her own unspoken desires. To most, her bond with Michael seemed like nothing more than in-law friendliness. But Angela began to notice how her mother's eyes lingered a little too long, how laughter between them stretched a little too far. In the beginning, Angela dismissed it. After all, what daughter would ever imagine her husband and her mother sharing more than casual words? The thought was unthinkable, too twisted to even consider. Yet, even unthinkable things have a way of creeping into reality. Sophie, Angela's best friend, saw the changes more clearly. Over coffee at her small cafe, she leaned in with concern. "Something's off, Angela," Sophie would say. "Michael doesn't look at you the way he used to. And your mom, I don't know. Be careful." Angela brushed it aside with a nervous laugh, unwilling to give shape to her worst fears. The Carter home became quieter, heavier. Meals at the dining table turned into rehearsed conversations. Smiles for family photos were forced, stretched thin like fading paint. Mrs. Lawson, the neighbor next door, noticed too. Through her lace curtains, she watched the comings and goings, sensing the storm that was brewing behind closed doors. But it was Angela who felt the weight most deeply. At night, lying awake beside Michael, she wondered why love had begun to feel like distance. Why her mother's presence, once comforting, now carried a sharp edge she couldn't name. Something was slipping from her grasp. Something precious, but she didn't yet know the depth of betrayal waiting to unfold, because this was only the beginning. What Angela couldn't see was that her husband and her mother were already walking a dangerous path, one paved with lies, passion, and betrayal, a path that would lead not only to heartbreak, but to something far darker. The perfect home, the perfect family, was nothing more than a mask, and soon that mask would shatter piece by piece. From a distance, nothing had changed. Up close, everything had. Michael started coming home later than usual. First it was traffic, then emergencies. Then he stopped giving reasons at all. His phone, once face up on the counter, now lived face down, locked, with a new passcode he never mentioned. When he laughed at a message, the sound felt wrong in the quiet kitchen. Angela noticed the small gaps. The cologne, that wasn't his usual brand. The faint trace of perfume on his jacket, that didn't belong to her. The kind of perfume older women preferred, classic, powdery, expensive. She tried to push the thought away. Some scents linger everywhere. Elevators, offices, ride shares. But denial has a short life when the evidence keeps breathing. Veronica began helping more. She brought over groceries Angela didn't ask for, rearranged the living room without being invited, and spoke about marriage as if she were the one wearing the ring. At dinner one evening, She smiled at Michael's joke a second longer than everyone else. It wasn't dramatic. It was barely anything. But sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like a breath. Take a weekend, you two, Veronica said, clearing plates that weren't hers to clear. Let me handle the house. I know what needs doing. Angela felt the words scrape inside her. We're fine, she said, but the house did not feel fine. It felt occupied by silence, by secrets, by someone else's plans. Sophie saw it. Friends often do. Over cappuccinos at the cafe. She leaned forward and spoke softly. He's dimming you. You don't owe him the benefit of the doubt forever. I don't want to become a suspicious wife, Angela said. Being awake isn't the same as being suspicious, Sophie replied. It's survival. That night, survival looked like simple checks. Angela opened the shared calendar. Michael had started deleting events. She checked Find My and saw his location services turned off. New habit. She scrolled through bank statements and paused. 2 charges from a boutique. Hotel downtown. Lunchtime. Same days he claimed back-to-back meetings. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontations without proof are gifts to liars. Instead, she observed. Mrs. Lawson, the neighbor, waved from her porch the next afternoon. Saw your car gone late again. Everything okay? We're good, Angela said with practiced smile. Funny thing, the neighbor added, softer. I saw Veronica's car around midnight last week. Parked down the block. Maybe she was visiting? Didn't want to bother you then. Angela's smile thinned. Thanks for telling me. Inside, the dishwasher hummed. The hum felt like a countdown. The next clue came in daylight. Veronica arrived with a gift bag. For you, she said, handing Angela a silk scarf, cream within gold lines. It's tasteful, mature. Angela thanked her, tied it loosely and caught Michael watching, not admiring, studying, the kind of stare that measures risk. Later, Angela found a similar scarf, same brand, tucked in the backseat pocket of Michael's car. Same cream, same thin gold lines. She held it, heart drumming, and told herself there could be a normal reason. There are always normal reasons, until there aren't. That evening, she tested the air. My mom stopped by again, she told Michael as she set the table. She's been around a lot. Michael didn't look up. She's lonely. Be kind. Has she been downtown lately? Angela asked. Near your office? He shrugged. How would I know? She watched him cut his steak. Clean, controlled, every piece the same size. People reveal themselves in how they do small things. When he showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. One message preview slipped through before the screen dimmed. Same time tomorrow? No name. Just a heart. Angela didn't touch it. She didn't need to. The house had already answered. At midnight, when Michael claimed he couldn't sleep and went for a drive, Angela opened the home security app. Most nights she ignored it. Tonight she scrolled through saved clips. The camera above the front door showed timestamps like footprints. A clip from 3 nights ago. Michael at 1:17 a.m., key in hand. He wasn't alone. A second figure stepped into frame. Just a sliver, just enough. A camel coat with a belt tied in a familiar knot. A smooth, elegant hand with a square cut ring, and a tilt of the head that Angela knew the way you know your own reflection. The clip ended as the door closed. The house went quiet. The screen went dark. The narration, however, did not, because in that moment, the story stopped being about a distant husband or an over-helpful mother. It became a countdown, not to a confession, not to an apology, to something, colder, sharper, closer. The cracks had appeared, and they were widening. The Carter house had grown quieter, but not in the way quiet should feel. This wasn't peace. It was tension wrapped in silence, a silence that pressed against the walls like a secret trying to break free. Angela had proof now, not enough to stand in a courtroom, but enough to tear her heart. A shadow on a late-night clip, a scarf that matched, a message with a heart. And though no one had spoken the truth aloud, the whispers were already alive, slipping through the cracks. curling in corners and haunting the air. Michael played his role carefully. He kissed Angela's cheek in the mornings, left for work in pressed suits, and returned with excuses that fit too perfectly. He knew how to appear harmless, how to dress betrayal in politeness. But when Angela looked into his eyes, she saw a man who was somewhere else entirely. Veronica was bolder. She didn't hide behind phones and locked calendars. She entered the home like it still belonged to her, poured herself wine without asking, and sat at Angela's table as though she were the lady of the house. There was no shame in her smile, just calculation. One night, while Michael claimed he had an early meeting, Veronica lingered after dinner. She touched Angela's shoulder lightly. "Marriage takes effort, dear," she said. "Men, they wander if you don't hold their attention." Angela froze. Is that advice or experience? Her mother laughed softly, too softly. "It's life." Then she slipped her coat on and left, her perfume trailing behind like a warning. Angela wanted to scream, but she knew rage would give them power. So she chose observation. She began listening not just to words, but to pauses, not just to movements, but to patterns. Betrayal has a rhythm, and if you learn its beat, you can dance ahead of it. Mrs. Lawson, the neighbor, added to the whispers. She caught Angela in the driveway the next morning. "Heard voices late last night," she said, voice low, 2 people laughing. "Outside. Not you. You should check your cameras." Angela did. At 2 a.m., the front door camera caught a figure again. Michael's hand, Veronica's laugh, then the door shutting them inside. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an illusion. It was happening here in her own home. The betrayal was no longer suspicion. It was a guest that had moved in without permission. Sophie, her best friend, was furious when Angela showed her. "This isn't just cheating," she said. "This is war. They're not ashamed because they think you won't fight back." Angela shook her head. "If I go at them now, I lose. I need to wait. Watch. Catch them where they can't wriggle free." The whispers grew louder. At family gatherings, Veronica and Michael's eyes met across the room, speaking without words. Angela noticed the hidden smiles, the stolen looks, the electricity. They didn't bother disguising anymore. They had grown confident. Confidence makes people sloppy. Late one night, Angela overheard Michael on the phone in the study. His voice was low. "Hushed. Don't worry. She suspects nothing. Soon it'll just be us." Angela stood in the hallway, heart pounding. She knew who she was, and she knew the man on the other end of that call wasn't just plotting love. He was plotting a future without her. The whispers were no longer just in the dark. They had stepped into the light. And Angela, standing in the shadows, realized the truth. This was not just betrayal. This was a countdown to her erasure. Because in this house, the laughter at midnight wasn't joy. It was the sound of knives being sharpened. The truth has a way of waiting. It lingers in silence, hides behind locked doors, and slips through half-closed blinds. But sooner or later, it doesn't wait anymore. It arrives, sharp and undeniable. Angela had lived in the shadows of suspicion for weeks. Every whisper, every glance, every midnight clip on the security camera piled against her chest. Yet part of her, the part that still wanted to believe in love, clung to denial. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was all coincidence. But denial has an expiration date, and hers ended on a rainy Thursday night. Michael had claimed he was working late again. Angela sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched meal she had cooked, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. Then a thought struck her, sudden, reckless, but unstoppable. She opened the security app. The screen flickered, showing a live feed of the front door camera. Nothing. She tapped 2, checked the side camera that overlooked the driveway. Her heart stopped. Michael's car was there, parked, and another car, Veronica's, pulled up right behind it. Angela didn't breathe. She didn't blink. She just watched as the 2 of them stepped out. Michael moved first, holding an umbrella. Veronica slipped under it, smiling at him with the kind of softness Angela hadn't seen in years. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. They moved, like they belonged together. Angela's throat tightened. She switched to the living room camera. A moment later, the front door opened. Michael walked in, holding Veronica's coat as though she were the lady of the house. Veronica laughed, low and familiar, as she set her purse on Angela's table. Then the kiss. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't forced. It was deliberate. A kiss deep enough to erase any excuse, long enough to shatter every illusion. Angela dropped her phone. The sound echoed through the empty dining room. She pressed, her hands over her mouth, fighting the scream claw at her throat. The betrayal wasn't hidden anymore. It was right there, in her home, in her face. She staggered upstairs, needing air, needing space, but the walls seemed to close in. In the mirror of her bedroom, she saw her reflection, pale, broken, trembling. And in that reflection, she saw the brutal truth. Her husband and her mother were no longer hers. They were each other's. Downstairs, muffled laughter floated up, followed by footsteps, by the clink of glasses. Veronica's voice rang clear. She'll never see it coming. Angela gripped the edge of the dresser. The room spun. Tears blurred her vision. But beneath the tears, something sharper stirred. Anger. Not just at Michael. Not just at Veronica. At herself. For trusting them. For giving them the chance to dig their knives so deep. Later that night, she slipped back to the dining room once they had left. 2 wine glasses sat on the table. Lipstick on one. Michael's fingerprints on the other. She picked them up with shaking hands, almost laughing at the cruelty of it. It was no longer whispers. It was no longer suspicion. It was fact. Her husband and her mother were lovers. And yet, as broken as she felt, Angela knew something else now. Betrayal this bold never ends at love. It demands more. It demands everything. For Michael and Veronica, simply being together wouldn't be enough. And for Angela, surviving would mean more than just endurance. It would mean war, because this wasn't just an affair. It was the beginning of something far darker. Betrayal has a ripple effect. It doesn't stop with the people who commit it. It spreads, through family, through friends, through every bond that once felt unshakable. Angela was about to learn just how quickly a home could split into pieces. After the night she saw it all unfold, silence became Angela's shield. She didn't confront them. Not yet. Confrontation without allies was suicide. Instead, she waited, studied, and quietly gathered her strength. But inside, she was breaking. Every laugh from her mother, every touch from Michael replayed in her mind like poison. Then came the birthday dinner. Veronica insisted on hosting at her house, Angela's childhood home. The table was dressed with fine china, the air heavy with candlelight and the scent of roasted chicken. Michael sat at Veronica's side, his hand brushing hers when they thought no one was looking. To everyone else, it seemed like normal in-law affection. To Angela, it was a knife twisting deeper. Daniel, Michael's younger brother, was there too. He raised a brow when he noticed the closeness. "You two getting along better than ever," he joked lightly, sipping his wine. Angela froze, waiting for someone to deny it. But neither of them did. Veronica only smiled, and Michael chuckled, as if the line carried no weight. The silence that followed was more telling than any confession. Angela spoke, her voice steady but cold. Some relationships go too far. The room stiffened. Veronica's smile faltered for a second before returning, practiced and polished. "What are you suggesting, dear?" Michael cut in, calm, rehearsed. "Angela, don't start. You're seeing things that aren't there." It was the oldest trick in the book, gaslighting. Turn her truth into delusion. Make her the unstable one. Sophie, her best friend, wasn't at the table, but Angela felt her absence like a missing weapon. If Sophie had been there, she would have spoken. Instead, Angela was surrounded by silence, by family members too blind or too polite to interfere. Even Mrs. Lawson, the neighbor, had started to pull away. When Angela tried to confide in her days later, the older woman shook her head. "You shouldn't accuse your own mother, child. People will think you've lost your mind." The isolation grew. Veronica whispered doubts into ears behind Angela's back. Michael painted her as paranoid, unstable, bitter. The image of a jealous wife was easier to believe than the ugly truth of a mother and husband entangled. Angela's world narrowed. Friends avoided her calls. Family members excused themselves from her presence. Even the pastor urged forgiveness, unaware of the depth of the sin. It was a trap inside a trap. Veronica and Michael weren't just taking each other. They were taking everyone else too, stripping Angela of support until she stood alone. But being alone did something unexpected. It burned away the last of her denial. For the first time, she saw them not as family, not even as lovers, but as predators. And predators could be studied, cornered, beaten. One night, as she sat at Sophie's cafe after closing hours, Angela finally let her fury slip. "They want to erase me," she said, voice trembling. "First from the family, then from his life. If I don't act, I'll disappear." Sophie reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then don't disappear. Fight back, but be smart about it." Angela nodded slowly. The war had begun, whether she liked it or not. She couldn't control who believed her, but she could control what came next. What Angela didn't know, what no one yet realized, was that Michael and Veronica weren't satisfied with just love or lies. Their plan had already grown darker, much darker, because betrayal wasn't their endgame. Erasing her completely was. By now, the pretense was gone. Michael no longer tried to act like a husband, and Veronica no longer acted like just a mother. They had crossed the line fully, and they weren't even, ashamed of it. For Angela, every corner of her home became enemy territory. Michael began moving his things, not out of the house, but into the guest room, then slowly into Angela's old childhood home where Veronica lived. At first, Angela thought it was temporary, a space for him to cool off. But the toothbrush in Veronica's bathroom, the suits hanging in her closet, and the shoes by her door said otherwise. They had built a nest together, and Angela's marriage bed had been replaced by her mother's. Angela felt it in the smallest details. When Michael came to pick up mail, he walked through her kitchen like a guest. He avoided her eyes, speaking with the tone of a man who had already left, but one still tethered by paperwork and legal strings. Veronica often came along, her perfume arriving before her footsteps, her eyes sweeping over the house like she was measuring what would soon be hers. "Maybe you should think about moving on," Veronica told her once casually, as though she were offering advice about shoes. "Michael and I were happy. There's no reason for you to keep clinging to something that's finished." Angela's chest tightened, but she forced her voice to stay even. "You're not just taking a husband. You're taking a life that isn't yours." Veronica smirked. "Then fight for it. Let's see if you can win." It was the first time Angela realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a challenge. Her mother wanted more than Michael. She wanted dominance, to stand in the space her daughter had built, and to erase her completely. Michael, meanwhile, showed no guilt. If anything, he seemed relieved. He no longer had to split his time, no longer had to invent stories. The triangle was broken, and in his eyes, Angela was the unnecessary piece. But what disturbed her most was how easily the two of them spoke about her, as though she wasn't even present. One evening, she overheard them in Veronica's living room while she stood in the hall. "She's fragile," Michael said. "It won't take much to push her over the edge. Everyone already thinks she's unstable." Veronica laughed softly. "Exactly. Once she breaks, no one will question it. They'll blame her mind, not us." Angela pressed her hand to the wall to steady herself. It wasn't just that they wanted her gone emotionally. They wanted her erased completely. Her reputation, her credibility, her very existence. And the house she once called home became a battlefield. At night, Angela locked her bedroom door, not out of habit, but out of fear. Every creak of the floorboards made her wonder if Michael had come back. Not to talk, not to reconcile, but to end what they had started. Mrs. Lawson, the neighbor, offered another whisper of warning. "Saw Michael bringing boxes into your mother's house late at night. Big boxes. Didn't look like clothes." She lowered her voice. "Be careful, Angela. Something about this feels wrong. Angela thanked her, but said nothing more. The time for confiding in neighbors had passed. She was alone now, but alone didn't mean powerless. She began keeping records. Every message, every bill, every video clip from the cameras. She wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. She was an investigator building her own case. Still, every night felt more dangerous than the last, because the enemy wasn't outside. The enemy was her own husband. The enemy was her own mother. And both of them had already decided there wasn't room for her in the life they were building. The home she once called safe was now a cage. And cages, as Angela was beginning to understand, were made to silence those trapped inside. Angela's instincts were no longer whispering. They were screaming. Every move Michael and Veronica made carried a shadow too heavy to ignore. Betrayal was one thing, but the way they watched her now, the way their voices dipped into silence when she entered a room, told her something darker was unfolding. One night, while lying awake in her locked bedroom, Angela heard it, low voices drifting up through the vents from the living room below. She slipped quietly out of bed, bare feet pressing against the cool floor, and moved to the top of the stairs. Michael's voice was sharp. She's becoming a problem. I can't keep pretending forever. Veronica's reply was smooth, calm, too calm. Patience. If we rush, it looks suspicious. But if she unravels on her own, no one will blame us. We just need to help her along. Angela's stomach twisted. Help her along. The words tasted like poison. Michael sighed. I don't want her to fight back. I want her gone. Veronica leaned closer. Angela could hear the smile in her mother's voice. Then let's make sure she doesn't get the chance. Angela stepped back into the shadows, her heart pounding. They weren't just betraying her. They were plotting her erasure. The affair was only the beginning. The true plan was to wipe her out, to leave her silenced and forgotten. The next day, small things began to shift. Michael offered Angela tea in the morning, something he hadn't done in years. She hesitated before sipping, her mind replaying last night's words. Was it kindness or a test? She poured it down the sink when he wasn't looking. Later, she found her car keys missing. Hours later, they appeared on the kitchen counter, though she swore she'd left them in her bag. Another night, the smoke detector went off without cause, filling the house with panic until she realized only her bedroom alarm had been tampered with. It wasn't accidents. It was pressure, a campaign to push her toward breaking. Sophie listened in horror when Angela confided. You need to leave that house, she said firmly. This isn't about saving a marriage anymore. This is about saving your life. But Angela shook her head. If I leave now, they win. No one will believe me. They'll twist it until I look unstable. I need proof. And so she watched more carefully. She checked the cameras twice a day, searched through Michael's emails on the shared laptop, scanned receipts left carelessly on the counter. That's when she found it. A receipt from a hardware store. Rope industrial cleaner. A lockbox. Angela's breath caught. This wasn't coincidence. This was preparation. She hid the receipt, slipped it into a folder where she was keeping everything else. The scarf, the wine glasses, the camera clips. One day, she told herself, this folder would save her life. But folders don't stop killers. That night, Angela overheard them again. Michael's voice, steady, certain. This weekend, she'll be alone. No one will suspect a thing. Veronica's reply was soft, almost affectionate. Good. By the time they find her, we'll be gone. Angela's blood ran cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't even just a plot. It was a countdown, and the clock was already ticking. By the time Saturday arrived, Angela could feel it in her bones. Something was coming. The house felt too still, the air too heavy, as if the walls themselves knew what was about to happen. Michael had been unusually polite that morning. He made coffee, kissed Angela's cheek, and asked if she needed anything from the store. It wasn't kindness. It was performance. The smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. Veronica, too, had been more attentive. She called Angela, urging her to stop by for a little mother-daughter dinner. Her tone was sweet, inviting, but Angela had heard that tone before. It was the same tone her mother had used to coax her into secrets as a child. Only now the secret was deadly. Angela wasn't blind to it. She had overheard their plan. She knew this night was meant to be her last, but she also knew something else. Predators grow careless when they think their prey is cornered. So she played along. "Sure, Mom," she said into the phone. "Dinner sounds nice." That evening, Angela drove to Veronica's house. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, but her mind was sharp. She had tucked her folder of evidence into the trunk of her car, hidden beneath a blanket, just in case she didn't walk back out. Someone would find it. The house was lit warmly, the table set with candles and fine silverware. Veronica greeted her at the door with a smile too wide, too polished. Michael was already inside, pouring wine into 3 glasses. "Just like old times," Veronica said, pulling her into a hug that lingered too long. Angela sat at the table, her pulse racing. The wine glass was set before her. She stared at it. Michael watched her with quiet expectation. She didn't lift it. "You first," Angela said calmly. Michael's jaw tightened for a moment, but then he forced a smile and took a sip. Veronica followed. Angela knew then. If something was planned, it wasn't in the drink. Dinner passed in uneasy silence. Every clink of silverware felt like the tick of a clock. Halfway through the meal, Michael stood. "I'll grab dessert," he said. He walked to the kitchen, and Angela noticed the way Veronica's hand slid into her purse. Something metallic glinted before disappearing again. Angela's stomach churned. This wasn't just paranoia. This was happening. Michael returned empty-handed. "Actually," he said slowly, "why don't you come help me in?" "The garage, Angela? I've got something to show you." Angela froze. The garage. She remembered the hardware receipt, rope cleaner, a lockbox. Her heart pounded, but she forced her lips into a smile. "Of course," she said. She followed him through the hall, each step feeling like a march to execution. The garage door creaked open, revealing boxes stacked neatly, tools lined up. On the floor, partially covered by a tarp, sat the lockbox and the receipt. Michael gestured toward it. "Open it." Angela hesitated. His eyes darkened. Before she could move, a voice cut through the silence, Veronica's. "Do it now, Michael. End this." Angela's breath caught. There it was. The mask ripped away, the plan spoken aloud. But Michael hesitated, just for a second. In that second, Angela acted. She lunged sideways, grabbing the metal flashlight from the workbench, and swung. It connected with a crash, knocking him off balance. She bolted for the door, her mother's scream echoing behind her, Michael cursing in rage. Angela's lungs burned as she sprinted into the night, fumbling for her car keys. She dove inside, locked the doors, and sped off, tires screeching against the pavement. Her hand shook on the wheel, tears streaming down her face. She had escaped, but barely. And she knew escape wasn't enough, because predators don't stop when prey runs. They chase. And Angela had just declared war. Angela didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. The image of Michael in the garage, the cold certainty in Veronica's voice, "End this," replayed in her head like a siren. They hadn't just thought about killing her. They had planned it. And tonight was supposed to be the end. But instead of breaking her, the attempt lit a fire inside her. Running would not save her. No, one believed her already. And if she simply disappeared, the story would be written by them. Michael would play the grieving husband. Veronica, the devastated mother. And Angela, she would become nothing more than a tragic memory. That was not going to happen. The next morning, she called Sophie to meet her at the cafe before opening hours. Angela laid the folder of evidence on the table. The scarf, the glasses, the security clips, the hardware receipt. And now, the bruises on her arm from the struggle in the garage. Sophie's eyes widened as she flipped through the pieces. "Angela, this is more than betrayal. This is attempted murder." Angela nodded. "And if I go to the police with just my word, they'll spin it until I'm the jealous wife who lost her mind. I need them caught in the act. I need them cornered." Sophie leaned forward. So how do we do that? Angela took a deep breath. We set the trap for them, the way they tried to set one for me. Over the next few days, Angela moved carefully. She kept her routines the same so Michael and Veronica wouldn't suspect a change. She smiled when spoken to, answered questions, politely, played the role of the broken wife, pretending to hold on. But behind that mask, she was preparing. She bought a small recording device and placed it under the dining table at Veronica's house. When she was invited for yet another talk, she made sure her phone's GPS was always on, tracking her movements, and she left copies of her folder. One was Sophie, another mailed to Mr. Preston, the family lawyer, with strict instructions to open it if anything happened to her. It didn't take long for Michael and Veronica to try again. Angela overheard them in the kitchen one evening, their voices sharp with impatience. "She's still here," Michael growled. "I can't keep waiting." "Soon," Veronica replied. "This time it has to be clean. No mistakes. No running." Angela kept her face calm, her footsteps light, but inside her chest her pulse hammered. Clean. No running. They were planning the second attempt. And this time she would be ready. That night, as she lay in bed, she rehearsed the plan in her mind. She would not meet them with fear. She would not beg or plead. She would take their weapon, their arrogance, and use it against them. For years, Angela had been the daughter, the wife, the caretaker, the one expected to forgive, to endure, to stay silent. But silence was over. When Michael and Veronica made their move, she would not run. She would record. She would expose. And she would make sure the world saw them not as lovers, not as family, but as predators. For the first time since this nightmare began, Angela allowed herself a small, fierce smile. The trap had been set for her. Now it was her turn. And when it snapped shut, it wouldn't be her neck caught in the jaws. It would be theirs. The final act of betrayal came on a night that looked ordinary. The kind of night neighbors might glance at the Carter home and think nothing unusual was happening inside. But beneath the surface, the storm had reached its peak. Michael had called Angela earlier that day, his voice strangely calm. "Come over for dinner," he said. "We need to talk to end things peacefully." Angela agreed. Her tone steady though her heart raced. She knew exactly what peacefully meant in their language. It meant they would try again. Only this time, she wouldn't be the one caught off guard. She arrived at Veronica's house just after sunset. The dining room was set again, candles, wine, silverware. A perfect scene for a family meal, as if the family weren't plotting her death. Angela sat down, smiling faintly, playing the role of the weary wife ready to give up. Michael poured the wine. Veronica placed a plate before her. Their eyes flicked to each other, then back to Angela, like wolves circling prey. But Angela was ready, under the table, taped to the underside of the wood. Her recorder blinked red. Her phone, hidden in her purse, was already streaming live audio straight to Sophie and, through her, to Detective Harris, who had finally agreed to listen in. Angela lifted her glass but didn't sip. Instead, she watched, waited. It didn't take long. Michael leaned forward. "Angela, you've made this harder than it had to be. If you had just—" stepped aside. Veronica cut in, her voice cold and final. "It ends tonight. No more games. Michael, do it." The words hung in the air. They weren't whispers anymore. They weren't hints or suspicions. It was confession, loud, clear, undeniable. Angela set her glass down slowly, her hand steady. Then she looked at them both and smiled. "You should have been quieter," she said. Confusion flickered across their faces, until the front door burst open. Detective Harris and 2 officers stormed in, guns raised, voices booming. "Police, stay where you are." Michael shot to his feet, rage twisting his face. Veronica froze, the mask finally cracking. The officers pulled them both back, shouting commands, while Angela sat perfectly still, her heart pounding but her face calm. The recorder was seized. The live audio confirmed. Every damning word they had spoken was caught, preserved, and undeniable. As Michael and Veronica were led away, Michael thrashed against the officers, shouting, "You'll regret this, Angela. You'll regret it." Veronica's eyes locked on her daughters one last time, not with love, not with shame, but with venom. Angela didn't flinch. She had flinched enough. When the house finally fell silent, Detective Harris nodded at her. "You did the right thing. They won't touch you again." Angela stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around her. For the first time in months, she could breathe, truly breathe. The woman who walked into that house had been a broken wife, a betrayed daughter, a victim teetering on the edge of erasure. The woman who walked out was something else. Entirely. She was free. She was fierce. She was reborn through betrayal. Later, as she sat with Sophie at the cafe, Angela allowed herself to cry. Not tears of weakness, but of release. Everything had been taken from her. Her trust, her marriage, her family. But what remained was stronger, because in losing them, she had found herself. And though the scars would remain, so would the strength. The perfect home was gone. The perfect family shattered. But Angela's story wasn't ending. Here, it was beginning. This chapter closes here on Emmy Stories. A journey of trust broken, love twisted, and survival wrestled from the jaws of betrayal. The storm has passed, or has it? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching till the very end. Subscribe to my channel and click the notification button, and stay with us for more gripping stories. This is Emmy Stories.